Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by Castalia Cocktails. Located in the lower level of a historic Victorian house in Detroit's Midtown, this space on 2nd Avenue is second to none. Don't just drink cocktails, experience them with matching scents and barkeeps that are knowledgeable. Try one of their pairings, or feel free to go off menu with an adventure for the senses. A couple of things that I personally love is that the menu both tells you how boozy a drink is, and there's a full non-alcoholic lineup as well, taking the care to give you a top-notch sensory experience no matter how you'd like to drink. Whether it's the intimate indoor bar with less than 20 seats or on the patio outside enjoying the best Detroit has to offer, it's a great spot for a night out, a drink after dinner, or a date. They're open to all Wednesdays through Saturdays from 5 to 11 p.m. with the possibility for unique experiences for small groups anytime with a reservation. You can learn more at CastaliaCocktails.com. That's CastaliaCocktails.com. Make sure to support the businesses that support us and stop on by. Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is a beautiful Thursday, May 11th, 2023. I'm Jer Stays, and today we're going to the east side. Cadieux and East Warren, to be exact. We're going to take a look at a building that is being rehabilitated as we speak and is turning a new chapter for a great old place. I'm over here on Detroit's east side at the Cadieux stage with Chris Lee, who just gave me a tour of this amazing building. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thanks, Jer. Happy to be here.
Of course. So the thing about this building, it's been around for many years. What's kind of the thumbnail history of it for listeners?
So this building was built originally as a soundstage in the late 30s and was home to Wilding Studios for many, many years. They did industrial films, commercials, or other smaller films, war films, and they operated out of here until probably the early 70s. History gets a little fuzzy there, but was also home after that from the early 90s on to Jerry Farber Photography, and was then named the Cadieux Stage. It was rented out for film shoots, for commercial shoots, for a lot of musicians, either music videos or practices or band tryouts. Bob Seger did a lot of his band member tryouts here. Aretha Franklin shot a music video in the early 90s. Grand Funk Railroad and Paul Schaefer came through on a tour in the late 90s. So there's a lot of history here, both on the Wilding side and also on the Cadieux Stage side.
So how did you come to own and be kind of caretaker of this landmark?
Well, I was looking last year for some real estate in Detroit, basically looking for some office and industrial space combined, and stumbled upon this. I have a photography background, and so it checked that box, and architecturally and the historical significance of it, which is another thing that I'm passionate about, checked those boxes as well, and it just seemed like a fun project.
So the plans, there is a lot of work going on in here. As we were doing the tour, there were work people getting things done, whether it's putting in trim, replacing, ceiling tiles. It feels like you're starting to bring this thing kind of back to life in a bigger way.
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, the idea was not to do any sort of gut renovation or anything like that. The building had been neglected and had deteriorated to a certain extent, but the bones are still good, and a lot of the original finishes and charm are still here. Jerry did a really great renovation on it in the early 90s, spent a lot of time, care, and money on it, and so we were able to bring a lot of that stuff back. So it was just a ton of wall repair, floor repair, ceiling repair, hundreds of gallons of paint and flooring and all of that. But yeah, we really wanted to bring the building back to its former glory again. It's something that he did in the early 90s, and we're trying to do that again now.
Yeah. Talk about the specs of this building. Now, there's a couple of stories that you can see from the outside, but let's talk about that stage. When you walk into it, I had that feeling of, home again, where people who listen to the show a long time know that I have kind of a TV and kind of background. And you step out there and this is the kind of infrastructure that we need to make this industry, this media industry, the film industry, commercials, all that go in Detroit. And those kind of spaces are very rare in the city of Detroit, especially. So what are the size specs and kind of the thoughts behind that? Because you had a lot of work going on in there.
The building itself is a 2-story block building with a stucco front, sort of Art Deco-y stucco front. And it's about 20,000 square feet, give or take. The second story really is only at the front of the building and a little bit on the side. You've got your offices upstairs and you've got like a green room on the second floor. But for the most part, that's all limited to the front of the building. The back of the building are the stages, and that's what you were just talking about. Those areas are about a little under 7,000 square feet combined with a ceiling height, clear up to the catwalks, which is about 18 feet. It's divided into two sides, and both of them have cyc walls, which is a curved floor that goes into the wall, so you have a seamless transition. And the larger stage, stage A, has about 100-foot cyc that makes a corner. So you got about 60 feet on one wall, 40 feet on another. And then stage B also has a curved cyc, but it's smaller. Both of those spaces are very well sound insulated. They were actually built in the 30s to be a soundstage, and more insulation has been added over the years. So once you close all those doors, you're really not hearing anything from the outside world much at all in those spaces. They're kind of like large white boxes. You can do almost anything you want in them. We've got old historic photos of sets, full sets that were built in there over the years, an entire gas station or a kitchen setup, or for the Aretha Franklin video, they built like a outside courtyard basketball court sort of thing in there.
And then there's the photography area too.
Right. And then there is also a smaller natural light photo studio that Jerry put in by tearing out a floor. So it's a 2-story room, smaller than the stages, but has great natural light, especially in the mornings. And then there's a commercial kitchen attached to it as well, because he was a food photographer. So that's a really interesting space as well.
What I was thinking about was there's so much food on YouTube and things like that. That's something where I could assume, say, somebody could just rent it for a day or a weekend or a week, knock out a bunch of episodes, and then post them over time,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great use for that space.
Kind of what are your plans for the future, timeline, that kind of thing?
Well, we're just about done with the office renovations. We have a few more, we're working on flooring and a couple other things we got to put in the kitchen. But for the most part, that's done. We've got first tenant moving in a couple weeks into one of those offices. So the plan for there is to rent them out to industry adjacent folks on a monthly basis. And then we'll be renting out the other spaces. So the stage areas, the photo studio, and the podcast/recording studio that we're working on will be renting out on a short-term basis. So either by the hour or in the case of the stages, by the day. And those have a lot of ancillary support areas, support spaces as well. An inner lobby for seating, a co-working office, a production office, a conference room, multiple dressing rooms, and then the second story green room that looks out over stage B, which is sort of like a client room / hangout pad. It's a really cool space that Jerry set up back when he did his renovation.
As we did this tour, whether it was old movie cameras, lights, architectural details, I was just stunned by kind of the things that connected to the past. What are a couple of the surprises that you enjoyed kind of bringing this building back to life?
Some of the surprises, really just the amount of old documentation that we've been able to find in this place. I mean, going through some of the offices that Jerry had, old photos of the renovation that he did on it, the old historic photos from the Wilding studio days, and just some of the untouched spaces. Like a lot of these spaces were renovated in the early 90s and just kind of untouched after that. So you look at old photos from back in those times and you can see things laid out exactly the same. Or you take it back further and you look at the old photos from the 50s and you can recognize a lot of these elements that are still in place today.
For sure. And when you look in the lobby and kind of the off area, the green room or whatever you want to call it, the photos date all the way back to, say, Sinclair gas stations and, the old movie trucks that you'd see from, the 1940s and stuff like that. It really is, it's kind of a trip to see all this.
Yeah, it's really cool. It was actually something that Jerry was able to find when he first took the space over. He was in contact with some still living former employees of Wilding Studios. I don't know that there's any still living former employees currently, but in the early 90s they were. And he was able to find someone that had a lot of old historic photos, and he allowed him to take them, copy them, blow them up, and preserve that history. We have maintained that. We've also added in some prints and photos that Jerry took, and we're going to plan on having a little hallway that is sort of dedicated to his time here from the early 90s until last year. Then make space for the future in terms of what we continue to do here and the people that continue to come into this space, and being able to document that as well.
And if people want to get in touch with you about this space, any questions, what can they do?
You can email me at chris@cadieuxstage.com. That's CHRIS at CADIEUXSTAGE.com. Or give us a call here, 313-885-4300. And we also have a website, cadieuxstage.com.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time and your tour today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay.
And we are done for today. Thanks to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, for supporting us, as well as Castalia Cocktails. Go check them out. I have always had fun with them over the years that I've known them. Tomorrow, Randy Walker, Devin O'Reilly, Big Friday show. Can't wait to share it with you. We're going to talk a lot about Alpina, which is a new spot in Corktown, plus, of course, a lot more around Metro Detroit. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and I'll see you around Detroit.